anything you ever did in politics that was useful as far as they brought someone in to?
No, usually politics stuff was kind of these grandiose, get into the minds of voters and connect with them and all this, it was kind of like Aaron Rodgers' ayahuasca ceremony, it didn't really go anywhere.
I am disappointed because I would think when you're in politics, they would have breakout sessions of remaining completely expressionless when your candidate says something moronic. Developing the perfect simper for when you sit behind the governor and he's signing something you don't like.
SNL sketch or maybe an As Goes Wisconsin sketch. Jane comes up with what tutorials you need to be a staffer in the Madison's Capitol.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristen Bry with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada. Hello, Wisconsin!
Hello, Wisconsin. Maybe I will still write that sketch. How to survive being a staffer in the Madison.
I think there's
Madison's
potential
Capitol.
there. I do. I think there's a skit there for sure.
Well, welcome to Thursday's edition of As Goes Wisconsin on this August 17th. And my question for you this morning is, when there is a disaster, and I guess more often, especially lately, it's usually a natural disaster. But I think you can also put in the financial disaster when that happens, like it did in 2008.
Absolutely.
When there is a disaster and that leaves hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people in very desperate situations, is the government responsible for holding off vulture capitalists? See what I did there? Instead of venture capitalists, vulture capitalists, because they're circling.
Got it.
They're trying to.
Nice.
Yeah. But developers who
see have a chance,
who care a lot about money,
yes,
and opportunity to make money. Is it just fair market? And should be left to the fair market that they have the funds to come in and buy property and fix it up, no matter what changes it makes to the community that is struggling? Or should the government intervene and put some kind of hold on the ability for them to do that? 844-967-2789, because you can probably see where I'm going with this. Obviously, we're still getting every day the death toll is going up in Maui, and
I think it's up to 106 now.
I even saw 111 yesterday. 111? I think as of Tuesday it was 106. I think I saw something this morning that said it's 111. They're still searching. They're still expecting it to go up. It's over 2,200 acres of land just in the Lahaina district. The tourist district, it was 2,200 buildings, like structures, that I read is worth $5.5 billion.
Wow.
So it's absolutely horrific what we're seeing coming out of Maui, right? But of course, that hasn't kept developers and people from contacting local property owners asking if they're willing to sell.
Who just lost everything they own.
And the Hawaii governor is trying to curb developers from purchasing destroyed lands in Maui. And I think that's a good thing. I know it's probably more complicated than that, especially as people get in desperate situations. But I think in the same way that you see the aftermath of what can happen in largely a lot of I know in Milwaukee, a lot of the slumlord problem is people who had the funds to come in and swoop up property during the financial crisis and the housing crisis of 2008. And so now a bunch of people, instead of being able to own homes, are renting from people who are not good people. And, so concerns are growing that newly built homes would attract wealthy buyers and exacerbate a housing crisis that has already driven Native Hawaiians and local-born residents out of their land. And so Democratic governor there, Josh Green, has said that he's reached out to Hawaii's attorney general for a moratorium on any sales or properties that have been damaged or destroyed by the wildfires. And I guess my question to you listening is, do you think that's a good thing? Do you think
is it overreach?
Is it overreach? Is it government overreach? Or is it protecting people from predatory deals that maybe are not the deal, and maybe not deals that they should take that are what they are actually worth? 844-967-2789. What do you think, Jane?
I definitely think there needs to be something at least temporarily put in place when people are in desperate situations. And as you said, this is an opportunity for vulture capitalists to swoop in and get the best deal for themselves.
Yeah.
It's rarely to help the people who just lost everything. And yet for some it might sound like a good deal, but
and especially they're desperate because I think we know from other natural disasters that sometimes federal aid is slow to come.
Yeah.
And so it potentially, because of the speed at which the government sometimes does not work, leave people in the lurch and that much more open to any money, even if it's not a good deal. And even if it long-term effects of that, what I do know, the little I do know, is that Hawaiian people are very protective of their islands.
Absolutely.
And their communities. And you're seeing that a lot right now as far as who's showing up, and it's the community members trying to help each other right now. But I think this is a bigger question as more and more natural disasters do happen, of where is the line between protecting the people who just lost everything from getting exploited by people who have more money. 844-967-2789. So the Green also has said that he is looking at ways the state can acquire land for workforce housing, which would potentially be helpful. But yeah, it sounds like he's pretty committed to not letting Lahaina and Maui get too expensive for locals after rebuilding. And so this is potentially a way that you curb that from happening. And it just becomes then, what do you do for residents who you're encouraging and cautioning to not take some of these deals? Because Hawaii's Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs urged Maui homeowners to exercise caution when receiving unsolicited communications about their properties. And they also warned that Maui residents that homeowners might receive less from buyers giving unsolicited offers than they would otherwise.
Absolutely.
And so we got one message from Josh Egan on the YouTube live stream. I hope that the people of Maui publicly shame each of these vultures that are hitting on property owners to buy them out. Me too. I don't know. I mean, I think they have bigger things to focus on right now than figuring out how to publicly shame them, but they totally deserve. Can you imagine having the audacity of approaching someone who you don't know, they might have just lost someone might have, a loved one might have just died in the fire, they don't have a home, trying to figure out where to get food, and they're like, hey, can I buy that from you?
Have I got a deal for you?
I'm gonna get punched in the face.
But I think, tragically, there are people who are incapable of feeling shame.
What do you think that is?
Because they feel completely justified in everything that they do.
I know, but is that just is that more sociopathy when you have no empathy?
Yeah, I would say so. You're a sociopath.
Is it psychopathy or sociopathy? I always get those two confused.
I don't know my pathies that well.
But yeah, I think we have a clip of someone talking about this, don't we?
We do. She is a resident of Lahaina and appearing on MSNBC talking to Katie Tur.
I think right now we just need the prayers, and we need the money to rebuild our town. This is going to be a long road ahead of us, and we're just trying to fundraise and make sure that the displaced families can go back home one day. There's a lot of real estate speculation happening right now that is really frustrating. And I just want to remind all you real estate investors around the world, like Lahaina is not for sale. Please don't reach out to these families and take advantage of them during the most devastating time of our lives.
You know, we just heard from our reporter and from a couple of women who say that they were upset about what tourists were doing. Now you're telling me that there are real estate investors reaching out to people about their property. What's going on exactly?
Yes, homeowners have been reached out by investors and realtors offering to buy their land. And this is disgusting. And we just want to make sure that people around the world understand our situation and know that Lahaina is not for sale. It is important that the multi-generational families that come from Lahaina get to continue to live in our hometown.
And it's like on Facebook. There was another article in USA Today that a woman said that she got a Facebook message from someone in real estate, and that
Really?
yeah, residents have been warning one another on social media that developers may try to buy their land. And, you know, I think we're obviously like, I think that's disgusting. I think it's, like I said, predatory. But I guess on the flip side of it, is it the government's responsibility to protect people from that? Or is that still personal choice?
Texter from the 541 says, when did we realize the general public is so undereducated they can't make decisions for themselves? And is there that much of a difference between capitalists buying up property and the government buying it?
Well, I would say yes, because I think the government buying it specifically for workforce housing and keeping it as an affordable place to live versus what we even experience in Milwaukee and all over the country right now is developers buying land and creating luxury apartments instead of affordable apartments because they want to make a profit. And so, yes, I would say there is a difference between the government buying it and keeping the rents affordable versus gouging people. So 844-967-2789. What is the government's role, or how do you protect people from being exploited during disasters? Or should they just be able to sell if they want to sell? 844-967-2789. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and we are talking about in Hawaii right now. The governor there is exploring the options to create a moratorium on any property purchases to fend off predatory developers who've already been contacting homeowners and landowners in Maui who have just, lost everything, asking them if they would like to sell their land because they are seeing dollar signs. And while I think many of us feel like that is gross from the side of the developers, is it the role of the government to step in and stop it? And I don't know, and I think, I don't know. I mean, because if you're that desperate and you want to be able to sell, it just feels really soon.
Absolutely. But again, is it the government's role to step in and say, no, you can't sell?
I mean, I think depending on what the unfettered fair market sometimes has bad outcomes. And so if your job as the government, depending on what you define that to be, is to protect your citizens, I'm assuming that a lot of these developers are not residents of Maui right now. Don't know that for sure. But as far as protecting them from, already Maui's no different. Hawaii is the most expensive state to live in and has already priced out so many natives, so many residents, where they're spending way over 30% of their income on housing, whether it's rent or mortgages. I think I read this morning, the average single family home in Maui, $1.2 million.
Wow.
That's the average.
Wow. And I'm sure it's nothing spectacular either.
Yeah. And so, in the face of trying to rebuild this in the best interest of the people who were living there, do you just do you not put some protections up from them just being able to sell to people who do not have the best interest of the people who live there? 844-967-2789. 2789.
We were talking about the difference between psychopaths and sociopaths. Dexter because we need our pathies distinguished. 262 says sociopaths have no ability to empathize with others. So the people offering these deals are just like Donald Trump.
Ah.
And from the 262 in Wisconsin, approximately 54% of all homes are now rentals.
In Wisconsin?
According to the texter from the 262.
Well, we talked about that. I can't remember if it was last fall or earlier this spring of, developers at least in the Milwaukee area, like the incentive to build condo buildings has plummeted. And so for, what was kind of a normal transition in our area, which was, a couple ages, they no longer need as much space in their single family home. They downsized to either a smaller home or to a condo. But the problem has been there's no condos to buy because I think especially in the last 10 years, there just has not been the same incentives to build condo buildings versus building more apartments. And so that's kept like a bottleneck and also has added to how incredibly high more like the housing market is right now.
Right.
844-967-2789.
Andrew from Maine is joining us. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning, ladies. I just wanted to kind of give a quick anecdote from an experience that my parents went through. So they live in the western coast of Oregon, and in 2020, their house burned down as part of a wildfire.
Oh.
It took them about a year and a half to actually be able to put a house back on their property. Fortunately, they had insurance, so they were able to get a payout pretty quickly. And so that was allowed them to find other housing. What they ended up doing was actually buying a travel trailer, parking it behind the fire station where my dad volunteers, and stayed there for about a year while they waited for a new manufactured house to be built, because the company they were going through had so many orders from the California wildfires that they were like a year out.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once it gets there, then they've got to clean up the property, put it in place, get it put together, and all of that. And that was without any government assistance or waiting for the government to come along.
So
depending on what the Hawaiians have for insurance and how quickly FEMA can
get in there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. But I guess and you also just think about island life in general, like, because where they go if they do sell their land, because it's a faster transaction than waiting for the government or FEMA or maybe even insurance. But you don't want to leave. Like, where do you go?
Right. And then the transient housing market, the hotels and stuff are now flooded with even Red Cross paying for the displaced locals.
Mm-hmm.
That runs out very quickly. My parents, one of the things they ran into is they couldn't find a room in their town. Fortunately, they had options, so it wasn't a big deal for them. But for somebody else, I mean, if you don't have anywhere to go, where do you go?
Where do you go?
So,
well, thank you for listening all the way from Maine.
Yeah,
Tom.
yeah. How did you find us?
TikTok.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you for listening, and thank you for calling, and thank you for that perspective. I think that's a good one. It's a good one to think about. And thanks for the call, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
I saw something the other day that was eye-opening. It was like, you are more likely to be a climate refugee than a billionaire. Just keep that in mind.
Happy days.
All right, we got another person on the call on the line. We'll take that call when we come back. If you would like to call and weigh in on this topic, 844-967-2789. You can call, you can text, and then we'll also get to the good, the bad, and the revenge when we get back for the next segment. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. She is Jane Matnair, and we're wrapping up our conversation around the dilemma of what you do with people who are, fairly stranded and lost. Their homes have burned down, and there is now developers who are reaching out to them asking if they would like to sell. And the governor of Hawaii is looking into a moratorium of keeping that from happening. But the bigger question is, should they? Or should it just be the individual choice of each person can decide whether or not they think that's a good deal or not? 844-967-2789.
Tom from LA. Good morning, Tom. Thanks for hanging on through the break.
Good morning. First off, we the people collectively are the government, and we must never forget that. This is a great time, Kristen, to talk about the difference between public, which is we the people, versus private, which I don't think many people in America even understand the difference. And public means that it's nonprofit. Public means that it's our tax dollars at work, and we all collectively enjoy from that, such as roads, except for the ones that are privatized. Privatized means that it's all about making a profit. You could call it profitized if you want. But it's really important that people understand the difference between these two terms, because one is about we the people and one is about private enterprise and making a profit. And that's, we all collectively put our tax dollars into a pot, and that's what gives us the public library. That's what gives us public parks.
Mm-hmm.
That's what gives us, hopefully, public health care or Medicare for all someday, or college tuition. We're all putting our money into it. So therefore, it is actually, free or close to free because we've already paid for it. It's not that you're getting it for free. It's just that you're prioritizing your dollars to go towards the public at large. And it's not for profit. That's the biggest thing. These guys that are doing this in Maui are the for-profit raiders, and they are trying to privatize that land, because once it's privatized, we the people have no more say in terms of what happens with it. When it's in the public, it is the government, or we the people, that actually have the say in it, and we can vote out people that are not in our corner in terms of whatever it is that we want to have happen. If it's privatized, you cannot. They are private owners, and they own that land. They can do whatever they want to it. You have no control over it whatsoever.
So I'm assuming you're in favor of a moratorium in Maui?
I am definitely in favor of a moratorium in Maui. I have seen it over and over again, like the gentleman said before, in California. First of all, they privatized their electrical systems, and that's one of the reasons why we had the fires in upper Northern California, because they didn't take care of the upgrades that a public utility would take care of. Because again, public is all of our money combined together to actually be able to have a nonprofit system that actually benefits all the people. Private, they will go ahead and they will look at what's in the best interest of the profit. And when they find out what's in the best interest of the profit, that's where they go, and the shareholders and whatever it might be. So they may not be looking out for safety, or they may not be looking out for things like that you would want them to look out for.
Absolutely. Thanks for the call, as always, Tom. And it is something they are now thinking that it was an electrical fire.
Oh, boy.
And Hawaii's top utility is accused of years of mismanagement. And there's a lawsuit that was obtained by NBC News that Hawaii Electric is accused of failing to take action to mitigate the chance of disaster, which is not unlike accusations of PG&E in California.
Absolutely.
And there is something as far as the responsibility, if we privatize our energy companies and then they don't
fulfill their part of the bargain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's too expensive.
Because that is part of the investigation now as far as what happened. But because there was part of the people are wondering, like, why did it take so long for people to know that they should be evacuating? And that was part of pointing fingers at the communication systems, because really the only thing they had in place with the sirens was more for tsunamis and hurricanes,
Right.
not really fires.
Right.
But there was also the fact that it sounds like they didn't turn the power off as things were starting. And so this story is certainly not over. But I just think it's an interesting thing for us to think about, as far as when disaster strikes, there's always going to be there's going to be the helpers, as Mr. Rogers says,
Sure.
look for the helpers.
Right.
And then there's also going to be the people who are the carpetbaggers looking to profit. So moving on. Was that a new rendition of Good, Bad, and the Ugly?
You would be amazed how many covers there are of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Who made that one?
This is from Southern Raised. Yesterday, I
Okay.
believe it was the Great Ukulele Orchestra of Great Britain.
I didn't know that the Great Britain had a great ukulele orchestra.
See what you learn on this show?
I would not ever, would Paul ever, could you see Paul ever being caught dead with a ukulele?
No.
If you're new to this show, Jane is married to a Brit who is not a ukulele player.
He would not be a ukulele kind of guy. But yes, I'm planning. There's a metal version of it that I will probably download in the next couple of weeks. See what else I can find.
Well, that's great. All right. Well, some good news. Wisconsin's Attorney General Josh Kaul has announced that temporary funding that will help keep school safety office open. Yes, the Wisconsin's Office of School Safety is using temporary pandemic relief funds to help continue services after that was cut from the budget.
Who got that?
The Republicans.
Oh, okay.
Which is silly, because this was a department that was created under Scott Walker.
No kidding.
Because it was created shortly after the mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida. And the office, its intention was developed and maintained critical incident response teams for every region of Wisconsin. And it also runs a hotline called Speak Up and Speak Out, which has fielded over 7,000 reports of bullying, suicidal thoughts, sexual abuse, mental health crises, and school threats since 2018, when it was in its inception.
Well, that sounds pretty effective then.
It sounds effective, and it sounds like something that we should keep funding. So at least for now, the Department of Justice in Wisconsin reallocated $1.3 million from ARPA to extend operations for the office, which they're then hoping that this will give them enough time to figure something out with lawmakers for ongoing funding for the office.
They just don't want to give Governor Evers a win in anything. You can't let him look good, Kristen.
I know, but it's because this feels like, sometimes they're like, is the program working? Are we just funding this to say that we're funding this? But it seems like this is something that was actually working, especially as we say this was the year of mental health, and so much of the asks to work on that were not met. This seems like one that covers a lot of ground, from, like we just said, from bullying to suicidal thoughts to sexual abuse, mental health, school threats.
Well, what I don't understand is, after every mass shooting, although there are so many now it's only like the biggest mass shootings. All the Republicans' response to how to respond to this is more funding for mental health.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes to paying for it, they're like, well, we're not going to do that.
I know.
But it's all about mental health and never the guns.
Or we need police, and
well, we need more guns.
We need more guns in the schools.
Guns.
In some bad news, at least bad news for women's health, interesting news for the political atmosphere. Yesterday afternoon, the notoriously conservative Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals released its opinion on whether they're going to ban mifepristone, the main abortion drug. Its ruling would restrict the medication, but if you remember back in April, the Supreme Court blocked any changes to access during litigation. And so the drug is available now. That is important to say.
Reinforce.
But the ruling is now expected to be appealed, which means that the Supreme Court will likely hear this case in the middle of the 2024 campaign.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So,
Gee, how is that going to work for them politically? I don't see
I don't
how
know.
this is a win.
Well, it's certainly not a win for women in general.
No
it's not
question.
a win for women's health, but it is certainly keeping it in the forefront of people's minds, because if this were to get banned, because this is the main drug in abortion access, it's something that this is challenging its ability to be through telemedicine and not necessarily have to have a doctor. Also, you can take it up to 10 weeks. And if the Supreme Court were to continue in the favor of how it's been ruled on in both the lower courts and the appeal courts right now, this makes mifepristone illegal or unavailable for states where abortion is legal. So this becomes, if the timing of this all works out, this becomes, again, keeping abortion front and center in next year's elections.
And I thought it was all about states' rights.
I know.
What happened to states' rights? We want states' rights. Send it back to the states, Kristen. They're the ones who should decide. But we're going to ban it nationally anyway.
But yeah, the panel at the appellate court ruled on Wednesday, one, the anti-abortion doctors' challenge of the approval of mifepristone by FDA in 2000 is likely barred by a statute of limitations. The anti-abortion doctors did not demonstrate that they were actually injured by the 2019 approval of generic mifepristone. And the FDA's changes to mifepristone, which allows the drug to be mailed, allows medical professionals beyond it and a doctor to prescribe the drug, allows the pills to be prescribed by telemedicine, and lets patients take it up to 10 weeks of pregnancy, are likely unlawful.
And isn't there some comment in there about how doctors are suffering aesthetic injuries? There's some ridiculous...
Yeah.
If they've looked at an ultrasound and the pregnancy ends, the doctors are harmed by this.
Yeah. So that's the bad news. All right. Then I have two of the miscellaneous. Do you want to hear about pumpkin spice or a woman gets her revenge?
Oh, let's do revenge.
I knew you would pick that one. Ex-boyfriend owes woman $1.2 billion in revenge porn case.
Wow. Billion?
Billion with a B. He said she'd spend the rest of her life trying to wipe herself from the internet. Now he'll spend the rest of his life trying to wipe his debt clear. A Texas woman identified by her initials DL has been awarded $1.2 billion by a jury following a lawsuit against her ex for subjecting her to years of harassment that included the dissemination of nude and intimate photos of her he collected without her knowledge.
Can't do that.
Jackson, the ex-boyfriend, obtained these photos by hacking into DL's home security system.
Wow.
And accessing cameras in her family's home. So these weren't just like, as much as people are like, well, you shouldn't take the pictures and you shouldn't send them to your boyfriend. No. These were things that he was not supposed to have access to, and then decided to distribute on the internet. So
sounds like justice.
Good for her. Sometimes justice prevails.
Nice to know.
All right. When we come back from the break, 3 headlines and a lie. Let's see how Jane does this week. You can play along at home. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. She is Jade Madnair. And if you ever needed a reason to watch the live stream instead of just listen to us, or go back, because we also post them after the live stream is done. We're posting individual interviews on YouTube that are about 10 to 12 minutes long. We have some of our short clips from the show on there. So definitely check us out on YouTube, but you can also watch the live stream on Facebook and Twitter. but Michael just left a comment on the YouTube live stream that I have up there right now. It says, "I'm happy I'm watching the YouTube because Jane's eye rolls are my favorite part of the show." And then Andrew left responded with, "Much agreed, Michael."
Thanks, you guys. That is so funny. And quite honestly, though, in my last incarnation, I wouldn't let myself be on camera there because I cannot not roll my eyes when I hear BS. I just can't. And therefore, I could never be a congressional staffer. I could never sit adoringly behind, President Voss and not make faces. It's not, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't.
I'm not very good at it either.
No.
I would say the face I make sometimes with callers versus how I actually respond. My responses are much more, they're diplomatic and thoughtful.
Than your face.
My face sometimes is like, "What are you talking about? What are the words leaving your mouth right now?"
We have non-diplomatic faces, Kristen. It's just the way it is.
All right. Well, before we jump to 3 headlines and a lie, we got Price on the phone. Price, what do you want to say?
Just a quick thing about where you're talking about the mifepristone or whatever, however it's pronounced.
Mifepristone, yeah.
So this is a thing where that there are some Republican strategists that are crapping their pants about this.
Yes.
Because they already caught the car with Roe, and now that car is moving, and the dog's not looking good, because if this gets upheld by the Supreme Court, that the kooks on the far right side of the party are going to go after Griswold next. And that's something that the Democrats should really push, because if this gets done, they're going to say, well, now we have a precedent. So now we can go after Griswold. So now we can say that you don't have a right to birth control. You don't have a right to these medications to help you from getting pregnant, or in this other cases of, actual health care that's not even for birth, preventing a pregnancy, but a lot of people take birth control pills too for other medical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And if that gets restricted, this should be the thing that every single candidate in 2024 is talking about on the Democratic side, because that faction of the Republican Party is controlling everything, and it's such a small minority that the mainstream Republicans should really be sweating about this, because they know they're going to get hammered with Trump in Texas, with Trump, with Cruz, who everybody hates. And if they're going to be going after birth control, that could be trouble. And that's all I got.
Oh, I totally agree. Thanks for the call,
Thanks a lot.
Price. I mean, that's what I said. It's not something to celebrate at all, because it obviously is bad for people who it's bad. And it makes things very complicated politically for Republicans, who this has been again and again and again and again and again a losing issue.
But please also remember that banning all birth control is a goal. And it has been the goal for 30 plus years for right to life organizations.
Because that's one way to get birth rates back up.
Absolutely. That is a goal. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
All right, let's have some fun.
Okay.
3 headlines and a lie.
Yes.
3 of these headlines are real. 1 is faker than someone telling you to let them know when you're there in town. Jane, can you spot the odd one out? All right. Number 1, cops say aliens attacking Amazonian village are men with jetpacks. Number 2, a Kansas grocery store now has the top podcast on Spotify.
A Kansas grocery store?
Kansas grocery store now has the top podcast on Spotify.
I like that.
Number 3, scientists just discovered a strawberry-like antarctic invertebrate with 20 arms.
Ew. Okay.
Florida village terrorized by peacocks plans to use vasectomies to solve the problem.
Do they live in the villages?
I don't know. I don't know if it's real or not. No follow-up questions.
All right, let's go through. What?
All right, so
3 are real, 1 is a lie.
It's the same every week, Jane.
Okay. I'm getting my ground rules in order.
You're trying to figure out which one is the lie.
A lie. Gotcha.
Number 1, cops say aliens attacking Amazonian village are men with jetpacks.
Okay.
Number 2, a Kansas grocery store now has the top podcast on Spotify. Number 3, scientists just discovered a strawberry-like Antarctic invertebrate with 20 arms.
Okay.
Florida village terrorized by peacocks plans to use vasectomies to solve the problem.
I am going to go with the creature with 20 arms.
That's real.
That's real.
That's real.
Oh,
The Antarctic strawberry feather star is one of 4 new related species believed to have been discovered by a team of marine scientists. It's weird looking.
that's freaky.
It's really weird looking, but that one's real. I got that one from Gizmodo.
Wow.
All right.
Refresh my memory.
So you got the aliens attacking the village that are men with jetpacks.
Okay.
You got a Kansas podcast, and then you got the peacocks who are going to get vasectomies.
I'll go with the peacock vasectomies as the lie.
That one's also real.
Oh, for pity's sake.
Residents of Pinecrest have complained about peacocks damaging the community. And I'd read more of this, but we are running out of time. But so that one's also real. Peacocks are getting the snip snip.
Boy, I'm on a roll today. That leaves guys in jetpacks attacking Amazonian village.
That one is also real.
Oh, God. I am terrible
They
today.
seem armored like the Green Goblin from Spider-Man. But yes, that is real. And no, there is... That one's like the most verifiable that you could probably just look up on Spot.
Well, I wouldn't cheat like that. But,
That's true.
I mean, our museum has really
That's true.
big following.
Yeah. The library.
The library.
The Milwaukee Library has
Yes.
a big following on social media. But yes, it is strikeout. Jen.
Wow. That was not a good
But those were some
round.
pretty good those were some pretty good real headlines. I'll send you I'll put all of these in the show notes today, but we gotta take a break for the top of the hour news. When we come back, an extra long public service announcement with Kristen Lyerly. She'll be here. We're talking cancer, talking a bunch of different stories. If you have questions, 844-967-2789. We'll be back.